Welcome to the LSU Sports Insider, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. Perryn Keys here hanging out with Koki Riley, our LSU baseball beat writer, and Scott Rabalais. Edward Scott Rabalais, our venerable longtime columnist. He's about to, he's gearing up for a busy, I was going to say a busy week, but it's already been a busy couple of months, and it's not going to slow down anytime soon.
Not slowing down anytime soon.
We've got gymnastics to discuss. We've got women's basketball to discuss. We've got baseball to discuss, and spring practice is underway as well. And we will get into all of that. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing today on a lovely Friday?
Doing great.
It's really muggy outside. You know, it's like spring is here.
Well,
we got a couple of cool days coming up.
And then, of course, in true Louisiana spring fashion, it'll be back down in the 40s in like 3 days. And, you know, who's to say? I should have waited to put my sweater vest back on. So it's a mistake on my part, the first one I've ever made. So we will discuss everything under the sun here. We're a day late. We're usually here on Mondays and Thursdays on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever the finer podcasts are found. And, of course, we're on all our social channels. We're typically here Mondays and Thursdays on all our social channels, specifically our YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. We're coming to you a day late. Some scheduling issues, as you might assume. And so this thing, we're trying to get this thing right underneath the gun before baseball starts this weekend. LSU and Xavier at the box. And then, of course, the LSU gymnastics meet, podium meet, downtown at the Raising Cane's River Center. There's plenty going on, and we will try to get through it all. In addition to the women's basketball game that's going to be going on, LSU taking on Auburn on Friday night in the SEC tournament in Greenville, South Carolina. We will get into it all. If you haven't subscribed to The Advocate already to stay up to date with everything, please do. We're, of course, the #1 destination for everything LSU sports. So please go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. Stay up to date with everything. Get everything sent to your phone, to your desktop, to your inbox. That's the LSU newsletter is where you can get everything sent there. To sign up for the LSU newsletter, you go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. And, of course, we are brought to you every Monday and Thursday, in this case Friday, by Champion Wealth Strategies. Champion Wealth Strategies is a national financial services firm specializing in the capital markets, securities, insurance, 401ks, and college and retirement planning. Our broker-dealer is LPL Financial Member FINRA, SIPC. As you know, investments are not FDIC insured, may lose value, and have no bank guarantee. To learn more, go to Champion Wealth Strategies and plan like a champion today. So we will get into women's basketball, of course, coming down the stretch. LSU gymnastics coming down the stretch. They are both certainly contenders for national championships. But first and foremost, it is spring, and we have not discussed LSU baseball this week. And LSU is off to another fine start, 12 wins in their first 13 games. They had to come back to win this latest game against Southeastern. Koki, of course, you were there. Before we get into that, just a little bit, just tell me what you're thinking after 13 games. Where do these guys stand?
Yeah, this is a really interesting baseball team in that they are almost the exact opposite of last year's baseball team, in the fact that last year's team was had a super duper ace, one of the best starting pitchers we've ever seen in college baseball, but not a lot of pitching depth after that, and then an offense that could put up 10 runs against anyone at any time. This year's team, it has tons of pitching depth. Doesn't have the super duper ace, but has an ace incoming in Luke Holman, who's thrown over 20 innings and hasn't allowed a single earned run. And then offensively, they're a little bit more up and down. And we saw that again on Wednesday against Southeastern, which you called a comeback, and I would say that's probably an understatement because. They were down to their final strike, down 3-1 with just a man on second base.
Yep.
And Mac Bingham was able to walk at that at bat. Ethan Fry doubles, run scores, Paxton Kling doubles, 2 more runs score, and all of a sudden they're winning 4-3. It happened that quickly, and it was definitely an adventure to sort of write that game report, I will say. But either way, it was a really good win for this team, not just because it was a comeback win and it was a win on the road, but Southeastern might end up having a pretty decent season here, and I don't think that's just coach speak. I mean, they beat East Carolina, the number 11 team on the country, on Sunday. I think they're 9-5 now, but they were 9-4 heading into this game against LSU. So I thought it was just a really good, tough win on the road, especially, fifth road game in 5 games. And
a very rare
easy.
road win. LSU put out after the game that in the SEC era, since 1933, it's only the 14th time LSU has come back from 2 runs down on the road in the 9th inning to win.
That's pretty impressive.
So that's very rare.
And surprising given
Very-
all the
very
success
surprising.
they've had. I grant you, obviously, when you're a successful team, you're usually ahead in the 9th inning, but nonetheless, you almost can't help but rally. It would feel like you almost can't help but rally a few more
Right.
times than that. So, and what was interesting about that game is sort of overshadowed because of LSU's struggles at the plate, and then following that up with the rally, with a 3-run rally in the 9th, it sort of overshadowed what may be long term one of the more encouraging signs for LSU because of Kade Anderson. 5 innings, no runs, 2 hits, 13 strikeouts, 2 walks. It was quite a show he put on the first 5 innings.
Yeah, I think almost any other team in the country, let alone not just the SEC, but in the country, would have Kade Anderson as one of their weekend starters. But this LSU team's deep enough to where he's pitching on midweek games like this. And I think what makes him so tough to hit is with his delivery, you really don't see the release point until the very last second. And I think because of that, the fastball gets up on you a little bit quicker than it usually does. And you've seen that with not just Southeastern, but with Xavier last week. They just couldn't catch up to the pitch, despite the fact that, he throws it with a pretty decent velocity,
Right.
91 to 93, but it's not like he's throwing 100 miles an hour out there.
And the fastball sneaks up on you, so then by the time you start looking dead red, well, then he sneaks a breaking ball past you, and
Exactly.
you're all tied up.
Exactly, and then you can start mixing breaking balls and his big curveball, which is a really excellent pitch, and his changeup. You can do it, and you can do it early in the count. You can do it later in the count. Like it just like when you're able to. And Coach Yeski has talked about this a little bit, and a lot of the other pitchers have talked about this actually, in that when you can establish your fastball and throw that pitch for strikes, everything else sort of can work off of it. And with Kade specifically, the fact that no one can really catch up to that pitch, not necessarily because of velocity, but because of deception, that's what makes him, I guess, so dangerous. And I'm really curious to see what he looks like going up against in Arkansas or Tennessee, even if we may not end up seeing that until the SEC tournament because of just the way their rotation's built. But the fact that you have a guy who's this good as your number 4 starter it's pretty wild.
That brings us to our next topic, or the next subtopic, which is that starting rotation. Luke Holman 3-0, 0.0 ERA. Gage Jump 1-0, 0.0 ERA. A couple of Blutarskis. And Thatcher Hurd, 1-1. He struggled the first couple of starts, but then he came back last week, and we haven't discussed LSU's trip to Houston yet. He came back and sort of, that was the Thatcher Hurd, that effort on Sunday, that was the Thatcher Hurd that we saw toward the end of last season, as opposed to the Thatcher Hurd that we saw at the beginning of last season and this season. That's all of a sudden you're talking about a pretty deep, 2 months later, who knows what may happen, and God forbid somebody has a UCL problem or something like that.
Yeah.
And now you're in a spot again with pitching because you can never have enough of it. But right now, this looks like as deep a starting rotation as you could ever hope to have in the SEC.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the deepest rotations probably in the country, and one of the better rotations in the country. I think I apologize. I'm forgetting who came up with the stat, but I was, just going through my Twitter feed one day, and I saw that they have one of the best fielding independent pitching numbers in the country. And fielding independent pitching is basically ERA, but it eliminates, singles and doubles, and it really just concentrates on the walks and the home runs you're giving up, and the controllables, basically. And LSU's pitching staff's done a great job of controlling the controllables, and you definitely see that with the starters. And Gage Jump has been was absolutely fantastic in his first really elongated start. He threw 5 innings against UL, only gave up I think he only gave up 5 hits. I think he only had 5 strikeouts in that game, but he was just inducing a lot of soft contact, especially on the ground. And you'd probably like to see him throw more strikeouts if you're nitpicking his performance. But at the same time, no runs is no runs, right?
Right.
And then with Luke Holman, he doesn't have the most explosive stuff. We've talked about that quite a bit, but he's done such a good job of locating his fastball. that he's just been unhittable for teams. And Texas is a ranked team. At least they were a ranked team. They've struggled the last few games. I think they've lost 4 straight, including the midweek against Texas A&M.
They got swept in Houston, didn't they?
Yeah, they got swept in Houston, and they lost to A&M.
Sure did. Yeah,
it hasn't been great for them lately. But LSU got their best shot of them because they were pitching their best pitcher, LeBaron Johnson. We can talk about the offensive performance they had against them, but for Luke Holman to basically just dominate that team, they'll have 12 strikeouts and 5 2/3. Very impressive performance. His slider's been an improved pitch for him. He does such a good job of just mixing his pitches and, again, establishing that fastball like we were talking about a little bit earlier. And then with Thatcher, of course, he just did a better job of locating his pitches. And once again, with the fastball, but with him, it was a little bit of a tweak with the fastball in that he was getting a little bit more on the side of the pitch. So it had this cutting motion to it. And because of that cutting motion, it kind of, it just helped him establish the pitch better and locate the pitch better and differentiate it. I guess more importantly, differentiate it from his curveball and his slider, which are 2 just very, very dangerous weapons for him and will always be dangerous weapons for him. So it wasn't a perfect outing for him. He still gave up 7 hits, 2 runs, but no runs through 4 2/3, and LSU starters for the first 15 of the 3rd innings over the weekend, they didn't give up a single run, which is
you literally cannot ask for more than that.
Exactly.
Over 15 to 3rd innings. That's not 6 innings over 3 games.
And against decent competition as well.
Correct.
Right? I mean, Texas State's a good offensive team. UL, not so good offensively, but they could still make the tournament. I mean, they made the tournament last year.
Oh, 100%.
Texas is at least going to make a regional.
Yes.
If not host. So it was the best competition they faced all year, and the starting pitching was fantastic.
The starting pitching has been fantastic. The bullpen has largely been very, very effective, and you've got a lot of options coming out of the bullpen. One other place that's sort of you mentioned this before we got on the air. One other spot in the starting lineup that is a little crowded for now and still a little muddied, but in a good way, is the outfield. Paxton Kling hitting 297, Bingham hitting 300, Pearson hitting 250, and then Jake Brown hitting 333. It's still, it's a little muddled, but again, looking like it's going to be a good problem to have.
Pearson struggled a bit at the plate, as you sort of noted, with that 250 batting average. He's not walking a whole ton either. At least that's off the top of my head. I haven't looked at his on-base percentage, but and I know Paxton Kling's hitting under 300, but he's been consistently his leadoff guy because he gets on base and he's hitting the ball, and he's hit the ball pretty hard on some occasions, and he just hasn't had good luck with it. So I think that number, the 296 batting average, is a little bit foolhardy in that way. And then Jake Brown, he's been a little bit up and down at the plate. He hasn't had a ton of at-bats, so that 333 number isn't...
Small sample size.
Yeah, it's mostly small sample size. And Mac Bingham struggled a little bit in the Houston series, but had a better game against Southeastern. Obviously he had the one RBI single and the one run they had until that 9th inning, and then worked that walk that kept the inning going in the 9th. So defensively, all those guys are excellent. Pearson's had a couple gaffes this season in the outfield, but overall, I mean, given how important Pearson was to this team last season, it's not like he's gonna
he's a guy you're gonna give a long leash to.
Exactly, yeah. And then Jake Brown, we know he has the talent to do it, and he's just a fantastic athlete. It's just getting him experience and seeing how he can handle better pitching as the season goes along. And then Mac Bingham's obviously a solid rock, and Paxton Kling's pretty much been the leadoff guy. So you have 4 guys for 3 spots, and you're kind of rotating between Bingham, Brown, and Pearson. So it's a good problem to have.
Yeah. 3 games this weekend, all at home. This is the last weekend before SEC play begins. LSU versus Xavier, 6:30 p.m. Friday, 5 o'clock on Saturday, noon Sunday. This will be their 14th, 15th, and 16th games. What are you looking for this weekend?
Well, it's the Justin Lohr Revenge Weekend series.
You got a story up at theadvocate.com about Justin Lohr, who came from Xavier, left-hander for LSU now.
Exactly. That's exactly why I mentioned that, to do a little plug, a little tease. And
nothing wrong with a shameless plug.
Exactly. Nothing
That's
wrong
what
with
we're here for.
Exactly.
That's why the show exists, right?
But yeah, Justin Lohr started his career at Xavier had 2 very productive seasons there, and I sort of wrote a little bit about his journey and a little bit about the relationships he's had with some of the fine folks at Xavier, and now he had like a 1.8 ERA in his last season at Xavier. Transferred to LSU this year. And it hasn't been perfect so far this season for him, but he's shown enough flashes to say that it's not like he isn't going to be a factor for this team as they head down the stretch. So I think that's going to be a storyline to watch whenever he throws this weekend. And I guess consistency from the offense. I mean, the Xavier's pitching staff's probably the weakness of their team. So I think you want to see them put up some runs this weekend, especially early in the weekend, because later in the weekend everyone kind of puts up runs because it's your Sunday starters at the end of your bullpen. So if they can, put up some runs today and tomorrow, that would be a good sign for them, I think, in general moving forward. And I think it's another challenge for the pitching staff because, again, Xavier's a pretty solid offensive team. They have a lot of the same guys that got them to a super regional last season. Mm-hmm. So it's, will Luke Holtman give up a run? So I guess those are some of the questions that we'll be keeping an eye out for. And I think the bullpen's one other thing I do want to touch on because you mentioned that they've been pretty good this season. To me, they've been a little bit up and down. Mm-hmm. They gave up they gave up 2 earned runs against Southeastern in the last couple innings on Wednesday. Had a couple leaky performances over the weekend in Houston. Nate Ackenhausen looked really good against Southeastern. Struggled a bit on Friday. Griffin Herring gave up a 3-run home run on Saturday, so it hasn't been perfect. But I mean, we've seen enough from Gavin Guidry's been fantastic, for example, and Fidel Ulloa didn't give up his first run until Wednesday. So for the most part, it's still much improved compared to last season. But I do want to see them, clamp down for a weekend.
The roles aren't quite defined yet, but you've got a lot of options. So
exactly.
They've got some time to figure it out before next week, where when they go to Mississippi State to open SEC play in Starkville. This is the LSU Sports Insider, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. You know where to find all our writers' great work. It's at theadvocate.com. Please subscribe to The Advocate if you have not already. To do that, whether that's in print or digital, you go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. Stay up to date with everything going on at LSU. We've got spring football, baseball, gymnastics, softball, still undefeated, the only undefeated team in the nation, and LSU men's and women's basketball. It's March, so plenty to keep track of, and you can do all that with our LSU newsletter. Get it delivered straight to your inbox. You can do that by signing up at theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. We are typically here on Mondays and Thursdays with the LSU Sports Insider. We're coming to you on Friday, but you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. And you can find us, of course, on YouTube, on all our social channels, but specifically the YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. Please subscribe there. You can watch us live, or if you don't see us live, you can catch us anytime after the fact on that same YouTube channel. And, of course, we are brought to you by Champion Wealth Strategies. To learn more about those fine folks, go to championwealthstrategies.com and plan like a champion today. So we're going to change focus here for a little bit as I catch my notes, which I usually have on my notepad, but things are just going great today, so I'm looking on my phone. Rab, we're going to discuss LSU gymnastics because they're coming down the stretch now. We're less than a month away from the Final Four. They've got a 4-team podium meet, not at LSU, not at the PMAC. It's downtown at the Raising Cane's River Center. You've got George Washington, Texas Women's, and Auburn coming in. And so this is first of all, it's a podium meet. Just explain to everybody what that means. It's very, very simple, but it does affect the gymnasts in a little bit of a different way. Yeah,
when LSU competes in the PMAC, they just put the different equipment on the floor. I mean, it's padded and things like that, but it's on the floor. At a podium meet, everything is raised on a raised platform, and this is what you're going to see at the SEC championships in New Orleans later this month, and at the NCAA championships in Fort Worth. Assuming LSU gets there, it makes a little different. Obviously these
it doesn't give quite as much.
Yeah, it's firmer,
right?
And so it's a little different feel for your landings, especially and stuff like that. So this is great practice. I mean, it's a real meet. It counts and everything in terms of scoring, but it's a great warm up for LSU for the SEC championships and for the NCAA championships going down the road. So it comes as a very good time for them in the season.
And it's and also with a 4-team meet that's sort of quasi similar to what they're going to see here in the next couple of weeks.
Correct. The SEC championships will be 2 4-team rotations, an afternoon and an evening, and LSU will be in the evening one because their score is so good. And then the same at a regional, the same at nationals, same in if you make it all the way to the Final Four. So it gives you all that same feel, and just being outside the home venue, you have to. It's always a little adjustment to other equipment and other sight lines and that sort of thing. So it's important, and for scoring, it helps LSU because even though they're traveling 3 miles up the road,
it doesn't count as
it is a road meet.
Right.
It counts as a road meet. It's one of the peculiarities you could say of NCAA gymnastics scoring. So, and this helps LSU because the road scores have to count. You have to count road scores so significantly in their season average.
So, the LSU gymnastics program's obviously been one of the best in the nation. Still missing that national championship. They've finished second several times.
4 times. Yeah.
Under Dede and under Jay Clark. So now they first things first, they actually dropped to number 3 in the nation in the rankings behind Cal. Can you explain how that happens?
Yeah, this is where it gets kind of screwy, and it's something that Jay Clark, the LSU coach, does not like very much. Late in the season, they go from just averaging all of the scores to NQS, which is your national qualifying score. This is where they take your top 6 scores of the season, 3 of which have to be road meets. You throw out the best score for some reason, and you average the other 5. So LSU is still counting.
Throw out the best score because they're worried they bought off the Soviet judge.
It's for parity's sake. I mean, most people's best score is typically at home, and the scoring's a little better at home. LSU's lowest counting road score in this formula is a 197.225 they had at Missouri earlier this season. So they're looking to throw that out. So last week LSU had a 198.325 and won by a full point over Alabama.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's like winning by a couple of touchdowns, in a full point. But
I appreciate the translation.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to come up with
the peculiarities of gymnastics. You can say, they beat it by half a point over there. They blew them to pieces. You're like, wait, half a
full point over a top ranked team, top 10 team is a very good win. But LSU had a 198.325, their second best score of the year, but they dropped from 2 to 3 in the NQS. Why is that? Because they're being dragged down by this road score at Missouri. If they go tonight, and depending on when you're watching this, they will have competed or they're about to compete. If they go to the River Center on Friday night and get a 197.8 or better, their season average will go to 198
because you wiped out that road
score.
And
they might jump Cal again.
Right.
It's not super important, whether you 2, you 3. Oklahoma's the clear number 1 yet again. What's important is they follow straight by this NQS to determine seeding for the NCAA championships. There are 4 regionals. You want to be the number 1 seed in a regional.
One of those regionals.
In one of those regionals, which will be on the road, by the way. LSU, it's not like women's basketball where, hey, they're going to get to host the first 2 rounds of their top 16 seed. No, they're all predetermined, and they're going on the road somewhere.
So LSU, after this quad meet down at the Raising Cane's River Center, they will have North Carolina. That'll be the final home meet of the season. And just as you mentioned, the SEC meet will be down at the Smoothie King Center and the NCAA regionals. Where do these? The meet is at 5 o'clock Friday. If you're catching this beforehand, what's realistic? Assuming that they don't get wrecked by injuries over the next 3 meets and things of that nature. What is realistic for the LSU gymnastics team? Can they win it all?
They can. They're going to have to be their very best, and Oklahoma's going to have to be a little off. You know, probably Oklahoma. They're not flashy. They don't do exciting gymnastics. They just do everything really well.
Right.
They just execute really well. They're kind of like the John Curtis of,
that's sort of
college gymnastics.
It's starting to become kind of a mini criticism of
Yes.
them, though, right? Because
Yes,
they
it is.
don't do quite they don't do the daring moves.
Right, and you've seen what they do influence other schools. LSU, when they do floor, and LSU is the number one team in the country on floor. Okay, their floor routines are dazzling, but now they do. Most of their gymnasts do 2 tumbling passes instead of 3. Why is that? Well, there's more things that can go wrong in a three pass routine. So, and that's what Oklahoma does a lot. And that's what a lot of the top teams are doing, and that's unfortunate. And that's something Jay Clark has said. In his opinion, it's not advancing the sport. You're always trying to improve score. Obviously, scoring is much better now than what it used to be. These gymnasts are even better. They're doing more difficulty and stuff like that. But it's not. That's kind of pulling it back just for scoring's sake. You should be pushing the envelope,
Right.
And they're not. But
And ideally,
doing
these
it.
teams would get rewarded for doing so,
Right.
Instead of getting
Yeah.
docked.
So what's the solution to this? I guess.
the solution is you could
you buy off the Soviet judge.
Yeah. There's always money is exchanged. A line from one of my favorite movies: "Money exchanged hands." And so they got the information. Solution is like there are in a lot of events that you just make it a required element. That you say you have to do 3 passes. Like you have to do.
That's gonna require a change in legislation, though, and things of that nature.
Point of emphasis for the judges, at least.
Right.
Something like that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean they're things like start value on vault. One of LSU's gymnasts, I'm not picking on her, just what she does. KJ Johnson is a very good gymnast. She has a 9.95 start value on her vault because she only does a certain amount of difficulty in her flip. So it's not a 10.0 start value like Haley Bryant has or a lot of the other ones. She does it really well, but she's never going to get a 10 on vault because of that. So they could do that. Unfortunately, in college gymnastics, we're seeing a big tug of war with parity and the lesser schools trying to keep things on an even playing field with the LSU's and Oklahomas and Floridas and stuff like that, and it's not advancing the sport, so it's not something likely to change. Like Jay would like to see the top 4 teams get a host a regional.
Sure.
Now, is that going to be difficult? Maybe when we have 2 arenas like LSU's going to have.
Boy,
that'll be helpful. But
that's a topic for a future podcast.
That is.
Not
Yes.
this. Before we we discussed gymnastics and baseball. Obviously, as we speak, or depending on when you hear this or tune into this, the LSU women's basketball team are going to be facing Auburn. It's at 5:00 on Friday in the SEC tournament. The first round of the SEC. Well, not the first round of the SEC tournament.
Their first game.
It's their first game after a double bye.
Yeah.
So this is a couple of things here. This is a difficult match. It's proven to be a difficult matchup for LSU this year. They split. They split. Correct. They lost at Auburn.
Yeah, LSU lost by 5,
yeah.
and they won by 5.
And they it was neither game was easy. Obviously. Before we get to that, I would just sort of ask you. Okay, so 2 major things. One, Michaela Williams. Do we expect she's dealing with plantar fasciitis? And if she skips out on this, now you're talking about an additional week plus of rest if she skips the SEC tournament.
Yeah, they're not going to play till the 22nd or 23rd in the first round of the NCAA tournament.
So do you expect to see Michaela? Number 2, how Kim Mulkey does not seem to conference tournaments do not seem to be the end all, say all, be all for her. She's certainly like to win. You'd certainly like to make a little run, and maybe that improves your seeding and solidifies maybe even gets you up to a number 2 seed. Unlikely, but in all likelihood, you can sort of solidify your number 3 seed at worst. What do you expect to see? What do you expect to see in this tournament?
I'm going to split the difference of Michaela Williams and say that she plays a somewhat limited role. They've got her on a pitch count. Koki. That was for you. And that they're kind of really watching her minutes and certainly watching how her foot reacts to this. You don't want to make it like it's important. The SEC tournament is important. You're playing for a championship,
Right.
And it's not like Kim Mulkey never wanted to win these things. She won 11 of these in the Big 12 when she was at Baylor.
Yes.
In 20 years it counted. They didn't have a tournament because of COVID one year, but so she's used to winning these things, and so you want to try. And she said to Reed Darcy, who's at the tournament, hey, everyone would like to see LSU and South Carolina,
of course,
in the final. It would be a highly watched event. But this is not the most important thing on your radar. It's having her healthy. And the best thing is for Michaela Williams to continue to rest. She sat out the season finale against Kentucky. The best thing for her to rest is for 3 weeks total until the NCAA tournament. And then that's what they should do. They're not going to win the SEC tournament without her, in my opinion. So it's a matter of what you value. And as far as their NCAA seeding goes, Charlie Cream from ESPN, who's there, the women's Joe Lunardi, the women's bracketologist, he thinks LSU is locked into a 3 seed at worst. That means if they go one and done against Auburn, they're a 3 seed at worst. He has them as a number 2 right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So if they win and beat likely Ole Miss in the semis and get to the final and even lose, they're probably a 2. I don't think they can win the tournament and be a 1.
A lot would have to happen.
Oh
yeah, a lot would have to happen probably elsewhere.
A lot would have to happen. Maybe like a real Cinderella wins the Pac-12 tournament or something like that. But it's they're pretty much where they're going to be, and they were a 3 seed last year, so that's that's similar territory.
I mean, look, if we want to walk this thing all the way back, I remember you and I and Reed talking about this, about how it's very distinctly possible that LSU has a better team than the one that won the national championship last year, but winds up finishing with a worse record. And that's worse sort of in air quotes. They had 2 losses last year, and now they have 4, and they played a tougher schedule. And they're
twice as many.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That's a tough standard. And that's proven to be the case. They've had to work through some things. They've had to, and we're seeing.
And I mean, the big concern is that they're not as deep.
Definitely.
I mean, certainly they kind of whittled it down to 8 players by the end of last season, and they're down to 7 now. Yeah. Which again,
and if Michaela
that's 7
doesn't
counting
play,
Michaela
doesn't play. They bring last year Poa has to start. Then you bring in Aaliyah Del Rosario off the bench as a center, and your first guard
Janae Kent, for 8-10 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, but they haven't trusted her with a whole lot of minutes.
Correct. So we will obviously keep an eye on that. One thing we are opening our eyes to is LSU spring football as well. Before we get out of here, Rab, I was just going to have you sort of reset. We're only a couple of practices in right now, but a big year coming up for Brian Kelly and the crew. Your top 3 takeaways from what you've seen on a very limited basis so far.
Yeah, we went out there on Thursday. We saw the first bit of practice, and it was just them going through drills. It wasn't very much. Brian Kelly said, he was asked about Harold Perkins moving to inside linebacker, something he addressed with our Wilson Alexander, and he basically said he can do more things. He can be more multiple. He can come at you from different angles. He thought people were starting to try to scheme him out of the play, and so everyone's skeptical. I think people in the media, certainly LSU fans, are skeptical. Is that you got to see it on the field,
right?
It sounds great, you got to see it on the field. I think another thing is the communication. And Brian has been. I say pointed is the right word, but there's been a lot of oblique references to the previous defensive coaching staff. It's like. I mean, about communication and getting your point across and getting the message across and that sort of thing. And he's talked about that he says it's better, with this. He's not saying it's better. He says it's good with these coaches, with Blake Baker, the new defensive coordinator, and the other coaches. And he talked about right off the bat. He talked about team leadership. He said, the best teams have internal leadership, players holding each other to a higher standard,
right?
Well, coaches having to remind them. And he said this has the chance to be the best of his LSU team so far to do that, and that's always interesting because we always think about the coaching, but it's got to be
these guys are on their own during the summer except for the strength coach.
It is, and I think of 2019 and what Joe Burrow's not just his talent but his leadership ability.
Right.
Come on, you SOBs, let's go win some football games. Follow me.
And come on, you SOBs, let's go work on drills and whatnot.
Right.
In July when nobody else can make us.
That's right. And I think Garrett Nussmeier's got some of that. I'm not saying he's Joe Burrow, but I think he's got some of that more overt leadership quality, where Jaden was more of a lead by example kind of guy. That's just who he is. I mean, that's not a knock.
A
it's
little
just
more
who he
vocal
is.
last year, but not. Yeah, it's just he's not fiery.
Right.
I was going to ask, like, I did see that comment from Kelly about how there's more player-driven leadership this year. I was going to ask, like, who was one of those people, and I guess Nussmeier. And
He wasn't specific. I would have to be Nussmeier.
Okay.
No, he didn't mention anybody else,
Okay.
but he's like, we have to be on time. We have to be on early on things and stuff like that. So, I think I don't know who's on the leadership council or whatever that they have, but he's and everybody's got something of this, but he's been big on this with the SWAT.
The accountability,
stuff.
the
SWAT
accountability
teams.
SWAT teams and the accountability and the leadership council and stuff like that. And Brian, it illustrates when people say, "Well, he's a CEO coach." Well, yeah, and he said something interesting yesterday about he said if he's ever in a team meeting room, he's in the quarterback room and just kind of mostly being a fly on the wall. He said, usually I get pulled out of there for something.
Sure.
And I don't think any of us, or certainly fans, really realize all the different pulls there are on a college head coach, more so than in the NFL or the NBA
more
or
than
whatever.
ever as well.
Yeah. And
Portal, NIL.
and it was really interesting. Like, it's like I'm trying to be in there and I'm trying to give input and help the situation, and I was getting somebody's always pulling me out of the room for something, So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, it's got to be, you got to put the culture in place. You got to say, this is what I want. You're going to be on time. You're going to make weight. You're going to follow this meal plan. You're going to do this and this and this. And I think despite everything people say about young people today, about this generation, everybody talks about this generation. They kind of
You can't do all
that.
the things these guys do without being supremely motivated and organized.
Yeah, so that's the part that you don't see. We see the tip of the iceberg. On the field is the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
It's all this other stuff that's below the waterline that goes on. And I thought those were some interesting insights that he gave us yesterday.
A long way to go before the end of spring practice, which I believe the spring game is April 27th. Is that right? Something that.
No, it's
I'm not. My pants are
it's
down.
not the
I'm sorry.
27th.
Yeah, it's
I think it's the 13th.
my days are running.
Masters
together now.
Saturday is when it is.
Oh well,
That's what it is.
going to be just devastated to have to miss the spring game, I'm sure. So, at one way or the other, we're talking about a long way, and they obviously, as we've discussed many times, coaches tend to do this, and they spread it over spring break so that they can keep these guys around for a little longer and spread those 15 practices out and get the most out of them. So. We will be watching that, of course. We've got a lot to watch these days. We've got baseball, women's basketball, men's basketball, going to try to make an NIT charge, and, of course, as we said, softball and gymnastics. And we are here to bring it all to you. So if you haven't subscribed already to The Advocate, please do so. Subscribe to The Advocate. You go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. Stay up to date with all this stuff. You can get our LSU newsletter delivered straight to your inbox. To do that, to sign up for it, you can go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. We are here every Monday and Thursday, typically here every Monday and Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. And perhaps more importantly, on all our social channels, specifically the YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. Please subscribe to that. You can catch up. If you don't catch us live, you can catch up with us and check out any of our episodes after the fact. So please subscribe to that. And of course, we are brought to you today and every day by Champion Wealth Strategies. Please find out a little bit more about Champion Wealth Strategies. Go to championwealthstrategies.com and plan like a champion today. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. We appreciate you taking out this is going to be a busy Friday and a long Friday, so we appreciate you guys stopping by and checking in and chewing the fat with us. And there's a lot of fat to chew through. For Koki Riley and for Scott Rabalais, I'm Perryn Keys, and for Amelia Cotton behind the glass, and for Alex behind the glass as well. We appreciate you guys tuning in. This is Perryn Keys. This has been the LSU Sports Insider.